Incredible shy girl discovered 5 symptoms no one noticed. Her touching actions saved a CEO's life. Emma sank deeper into her chair, mind racing as she replayed the recent events in her mind. While the fluorescent lights buzzed around her, she felt like a ghost drifting through the vibrant atmosphere of the tech startup. Everyone around her thrived. Charismatic colleagues easily captured the attention and admiration of David Mason, the high-profile CEO. And here she was, just the quiet intern, wearing jeans and sneakers while her louder peers donned polished suits. Yet, today, something shifted. An unease nestled in her gut. She couldn't shake the feeling that David was hiding a significant truth, one that could disrupt the carefully curated facade he projected. Starting the day well before dawn, Emma often sipped her coffee in solitude, gathering her thoughts for a full day of analysis and support. Today, however, while compiling data for a forthcoming presentation, she had stumbled across alarming indicators in David's health reports: erratic heart rates and alarming stress levels. Each symptom felt like a cold realization, one she couldn't easily dismiss, forcing her to choose between her own safety and his life. A rush of conflicting emotions tied her stomach in knots. If she said nothing, she risked David's well-being. But if she spoke up, would she become the target of resentment, the loser in turn, bringing down the golden boy of their startup? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emma glanced around, watching her colleagues chatter excitedly while she remained an outlier, a mere observer. The thought of her anonymous email to the board hovered at the forefront of her mind, gearing up the tension within her. Would it even matter? What if it backfired? In a moment that felt agonizingly suspended in time, she echoed her mother's teachings. True courage doesn't arrive clad in glory, it sneaks in through silent, resolute actions. Yet regret twisted her insides. She was no hero, merely a timid girl trying intensely to be seen. As the hours passed, whispers of admiration began filtering through the office. Her act was neither for recognition nor fame, but seeing her co-workers' awe made dread swirl inside her. They speculated about the intern who had orchestrated the miracle, but underneath that applause, she felt fear settle in. Now, all eyes were on her. Envy twisted the smiles of her peers like daggers, echoing words like imposter as she felt each glance weighing heavier with scrutiny. In the quiet moments, she faced a deeper layer of anguish, the realization that with acknowledgement comes a type of vulnerability she had never anticipated. Each new day opening up presented a delicate reckoning: would she hold on to the semblance of anonymity, or dare to step into this limelight, knowing full well it could burn? There was no road map for what lay ahead. Standing on the precipice of recognition, she succumbed to the anxiety of self-doubt while questioning if the spotlight was still bright enough to shield her true identity. Emma knew she could save a life, but at what cost to her own? The narrative twisted dramatically, leaving the audience eagerly awaiting what might come next. With each day that passed, Emma wrestled with her newfound notoriety, a stark contrast to her former life as the invisible intern. Meetings buzzed with discussions about her, colleagues casting glances that oscillated between admiration and suspicion. They were quick to call her a hero, but she felt more like an imposter stepping into unfamiliar shoes. With her small act of courage had come an upheaval that churned her insides. She spent her afternoons hunched over her desk, drafting an internal report that detailed her findings on David's health. The words felt heavy, more like a confession of sorts. Would exposing these issues be an act of integrity or a betrayal? Her moral compass flickered uneasily, caught between the urgency to protect David and the fear of sinking further into the spotlight she despised. While others relished the excitement of their bustling workplace, Emma approached each moment cautiously, like a deer in headlights. Coffee breaks became frantic retreats, her mind consumed by the weight of expectations. She watched as her colleagues strategized and plotted their next career moves with reckless abandon, while she struggled just to breathe without the specter of scrutiny looming over her. Her involvement in David's situation left her undeniably altered. The subtle shift in her perspective ignited a hunger for growth. Late one night, sitting alone in her dim room, a spark of realization ignited. What if she could learn to navigate this chaotic energy? What if she could turn this overwhelming narrative into an opportunity for herself? Emma began documenting each meeting, taking notes not only on outcomes but on interpersonal dynamics, honing the skills she had always exercised in isolation. She became a quiet observer, dissecting how charisma influenced promotions, how conversations ignited alliances, and how small gestures could instill confidence. In that dim light, she felt the embers of ambition flickering to life. The next morning, she sought accountability through self-affirmation, whispering to herself the traits she admired in others: confidence, poise, and charisma. Sure, they felt foreign, but perhaps she could adopt small aspects of those traits without losing herself. Stepping into the office, she resolved to engage more deliberately. Instead of melting away between projects, she approached her manager after a meeting, asking insightful questions that sparked a conversation. The reaction was immediate. Appreciation washed over her manager's face, an affirmation that her insights mattered. But with newfound engagement came unexpected trials. As Emma's voice grew clearer, so did the murmurs around her. The snide comments began to pierce her armor of resolve. Some colleagues resented her rise, their dismissive laughter echoed during sudden price calculations or brainstorming sessions. It stung painfully, the essence of their jibes rooted in fear and insecurity, revealing the fragility of her growth. Yet in this turbulence, Emma found resolve testing her core. She needed to stand firm, not just for herself but to reframe the narrative, to confront the shadows fainting her spirit. Surrounded by naysayers but emboldened by her quiet victories, she decided to deepen her connections with a few supportive allies in the company. The turning point came on a fateful afternoon when Emma's path intertwined with David's during an informal coffee catch-up. Their conversation meandered from work reports to personal reflections. David, unaware of the toll his public persona took on her, unknowingly implored her to find her voice, to let her mind be heard. Emma realized perhaps it was time to open up about her findings, to advocate not just for his well-being but for her own insecurities too. In that vulnerable dialogue, where fear clashed with burgeoning confidence, Emma faced a life-altering moment. She etherically realized the truth lurking beneath her anxiety. Strength lay not in perfecting freedom from scrutiny but in embracing visibility despite it. As her heart raced, she knew she was on the cusp of revealing something deeper than the concerns she held about David. The moment had arrived for Emma to face herself, and by doing so, she would need to confront not only her fears but also the skepticism surrounding her actions. The stakes had dramatically risen, and she felt she was on a precipice, ready to plunge into her most significant decision yet. Would she risk all by declaring her findings publicly or allow doubt to tether her to the shadows once more? The future shimmered uncertainly before her. Emma's choice loomed large, her psyche ignited by both dread and aspiration, shaping the trajectory of her emerging identity as the spotlight's glow intensified around her. Emma sat in her office, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The internal report laid out before her felt like a loaded gun, its potential consequences entering her mind like a barrage of worries. She could feel her pulse quicken each time she contemplated clicking send. What if her findings led to backlash? Would her colleagues turn on her in unison, branding her a traitor for exposing David's vulnerabilities? Yet, amidst the chaos of her thoughts emerged a flicker of the hunger that had kindled days ago. Refusing to be boxed in by fear, she summoned all the courage she had recently cultivated. She envisioned her words sparking not only a transformation for David but also for herself, an opportunity to solidify her place and belief in her capabilities. The soft drone of office chatter grew muted, as if echoing from a distance. With every thump of her heart, clarity seeped through her anxiety. Emma took a deep breath, the air filling her lungs with the scent of possibility. She leaned forward in her chair and began typing. Reflecting on their conversation, she crafted a narrative that not only articulated her concerns but also illuminated the necessity for transparency and action. Documenting her observations with precision, she made sure to validate her findings, intertwining them with David's contributions to the company, her way of acknowledging both the upheaval and the humanity between them. Each word brought her closer to the commitment she had chosen to embrace. With the draft complete, Emma hesitated before hitting send. The decision felt monumental, so laden with the consequences of bravery. Her fingers trembled as she hovered over the key. What would it mean for her career? Would she become the outcast, the woman who pointed out a flaw in the system, or would she emerge as a proactive problem solver worthy of respect? In that moment, her office door swung open, and Nick, one of the few colleagues who had not turned against her, stepped in with his usual casual demeanor. "Hey, Emma. Got a minute?" His question hung in the air, a reminder that life in all its complexities continued, whether or not she chose to act. "Sure," Emma replied, the tension in her stomach both rising and settling. A moment of camaraderie, however brief, offered her a sense of solace in the impending storm. As she shared her thoughts about her findings on David, she felt the pressure lift slightly. Nick leaned against her desk, his expression shifting from casual to contemplative as she spoke. Each detail she unraveled transformed into important conversation, bridging the gap of isolation she felt from her peers. Slowly, she began to see a path forward, not just for David, but for her own growth. "Wow, you really have done your homework," Nick noted, a diminishing sense of skepticism creeping into his eyes. "But do you think it's wise to get involved? People can be harsh." His words resonated with her apprehension. Yet, rather than retreat into uncertainty, Emma decided to view the skepticism as a challenge rather than a deterrent. This was not merely about David's health, it was about her evolution. If she failed to advocate for herself, her potential would remain overshadowed. With a steely gaze, she realized that true growth resided in challenging the norm, in tipping the scales of fairness. "I think they need to hear this. Someone has to be the voice that brings change." Nick nodded slowly, acknowledging her resolve. "Then do it. Just know what you're signing up for." As he left, Emma felt a newfound resolve settle within her core. She was breaking free from the confines of her former self, one deliberate step at a time. With each moment of clarity, doubts still fluttered, but now they existed alongside the certainty that she had something valuable to contribute. Empowered by the shift in her mindset, Emma finally clicked send, her breath hitching when the email vanished into the ether. This was an act of faith not only in her findings but in herself. In the ensuing silence, her heart raced with anticipation. What repercussions would follow? Would her colleagues rally around the truth, or would they push back against it? She understood that facing scrutiny would be inevitable, the tides of doubt still crashed against her. Yet, for the first time, she believed in her ability to withstand them. Just as she collected her thoughts, her phone buzzed with a notification. A moment later, she read through a swiftly forwarded email illuminating potential conflicts that could arise from revealing her findings, suggesting a fragile drama brewing beneath the surface of the office politics. The email wasn't just about the findings, it was a warning, a complex net woven from distrust and hidden motives. Emma's heart raced, and a new realization struck her: her journey had only just begun. The upcoming confrontation would shift the tides like never before, revealing true colors and intentions. The time had indeed come to face not only her professional dilemmas but the hidden adversaries simmering in the background. Emma could either sink or swim alongside her newfound voice, but what lay ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty. Emma sat in silence, her finger lingering over the mouse as the room pulsed with unnerving energy. The soft tick of the wall clock reminded her of the pace of impending change, a reminder that time was taut with potential consequences. Immediately after she pressed send, the ripple effects had begun, and with them, the doubt she had fought so hard to suppress now loomed larger. Moments later, another email buzzed into her inbox, this time from the HR director. The subject line was bold: schedule conflict meeting. She could sense it, the tension seeping through the corporate walls, an undercurrent of trepidation ignited by her actions. Emma stared at the screen with a tightening knot forming in her stomach. This jungle of office dynamics was not simply a backdrop, it was a living, breathing entity that had now been stirred awake, and she was the catalyst. She knew what this meant: a confrontation awaited her. The specter of her earlier fears returned with ferocity. People she once considered allies might soon become opponents. But even as anxiety coiled tightly around her chest, a surge of adrenaline flickered within. This was an opportunity for clarity and confrontation, and she refused to step back. Emma closed her eyes, breathing deeply, activating the very courage she had summoned earlier. Her heart was no longer just racing from fear, it now thrummed in anticipation of challenging the status quo. She envisioned the possibilities of her confrontation, the chance to unveil truths hidden beneath layers of complacency. With that, she could reclaim not only her voice but also her narrative. After a brief moment, she decided to plan. Digging into her experience, Emma retrieved instances of past team meetings and interactions with colleagues, preparing herself for the discussions ahead. She remembered moments when she felt utterly ignored and how she often subverted her thoughts for the sake of harmony. No longer. As she began jotting down notes, a realization dawned on her: her developmental arc was not merely centered around the report or reactions of her peers but also necessary for her understanding of power dynamics that lingered in her workplace. By recognizing her own silence and the roots of her fear, Emma slowly dismantled the barriers built within herself. An hour later, she gathered all the relevant documents, transforming her fears into facts. She knew she would need to navigate the office with strategic precision; her emotions would have no place here. After sending an additional confirmation to HR about her attendance in the upcoming meeting, Emma leaned back in her chair, vigilant yet resolute. A glimpse of her reflection in the window revealed the shadow of self-doubt slowly fading into the background. She felt the gravity of her growth. Her previous hesitations were shifting into something powerful, a form of activism for her beliefs. Suddenly, her phone chimed again. It was a message from Nick. Heard they're prepping for a response strategy. Be careful. They're not just upset, they're calculated. The shift from uncertainty to calculation filled her with resolve. It became clear that this was not merely about her findings regarding David anymore. It became a war for her identity in this workplace. Each thought spiraled towards understanding this moment could either see her dismantle ingrained power dynamics or suffocate under their weight. Emma's thoughts began to crystallize. She realized she could prepare herself not only for factual rebuttal but also for personal backlash. She had much to consider: who would stand by her side? Who were the allies in this unfolding battle, and who would remain unseen adversaries? The looming prospect of the meeting felt heavy on her shoulders, a silent roller coaster of emotions, all simmering just beneath the surface. She had to remind herself of her earlier conviction that someone had to be the voice that brings change. In this moment of reflection, she knew what awaited her would require not only her newfound resolve but also an understanding of who she was becoming. Was she ready to confront those hidden motives? The echo of her own narrative called her urgently forward. As adrenaline fueled her thoughts, a singular question arose: how far would she go to protect not just her career, but her voice in the cacophony of corporate politics? The question lingered in the air, awaiting an answer, as Emma readied herself mentally for the upcoming confrontation, a choice that could redefine her place in an environment rife with secrecy and suspicion. Would she stand firm against the tide or capitulate? Emma arrived at the meeting room 15 minutes early, the cold fluorescent lights flickering overhead as shadows danced behind her. This was not merely a meeting, it felt like a stage where profound truths would be revealed and concealed intentions laid bare. Her palms clammy against the cool tablet she held, she navigated between the palpable walls of anxiety and the building determination electrifying her veins. As she waited, she immersed herself in a mental rehearsal. Each point she planned to articulate evolved in her mind, transforming what once felt threatening into a structure of conviction. This was not just about presenting her report, it was about confronting a culture of silence. Each statistic she would present felt like a stone solidifying her stance. The door creaked open, and David stepped in, a palpable air of authority trailing behind him. It was almost amusing how he wore the very essence of corporate confidence as a suit, as if it somehow shielded him from accountability. Emma's stomach twisted, but she locked eyes with him, refusing to back down. They were not peers in that moment, he was the embodiment of the manner of dread she wished to dismantle. As others filed in, their expressions ranged from curiosity to guarded hostility. She had anticipated apathy, but there was something darker simmering beneath the surface, an instinctive need to protect their territory. The realization that her colleagues could choose silence over solidarity injected even more urgency into her resolve. "Thank you all for coming," David began, gesturing toward the assorted charts projected behind him. He launched into the standard meeting protocol, but Emma could see through the veneer of congeniality. The underlying tension hung thick, clinging to the air like static before a storm. When her moment arrived, she straightened her back, resisting the urge to fidget. "I appreciate the opportunity to discuss my findings," she said, her voice breaking through the calculated cadence established in the room. The initial warmth in her tone was met with a slight wave of discomfort, glances exchanging among her colleagues, as if frightened by her disruption. She outlined her analysis meticulously, each point punctuated by steadfast conviction. The facts bolstered her narrative, instances where productivity had waned due to poor communication and how morale had dipped. Yet, she more than just pointed to the data, she spoke to the unvoiced feelings that had festered behind the surface for too long. This was not just about numbers, it was about community, a collective discontent that had been ignored. As she approached the core of her argument, she presented case studies of similar companies that had thrived after restructuring their internal relations. A well-timed silence fell as she concluded, daring to meet the incredulous gazes around her. "Culture matters. We can choose either silence or collaboration. I advocate for the latter." In that moment, optimism flared inside her like a match struck against the cold, damp wood of doubt. Then came the expected resistance. "Emma, you must understand that what you're proposing could disrupt our workflow," David countered, masking his defensiveness behind a facade of concern. The reaction ignited a tumult within her. This was indeed the moment for confrontation, and she had planned for it. Disruption isn't inherently negative. If we don't evolve, we stagnate, and stagnation leads to decay. Are we really willing to sacrifice progress for the fear of discomfort? By challenging him, she laid bare the stakes that few, if any, dared to approach directly. As tensions escalated, Emma recognized the rising tide of her own courage with each word she spoke. She stitched her own identity tightly into the narrative she was creating. The meeting shifted, voices clamored, some in agreement while others voiced dissent. Emma felt as though she was teetering on the precipice of something monumental, a shift not only of her own fate but of the culture they all inhabited. Little did she realize the hidden alliances forming with the colleagues nodding along with her points, their silent support a bedrock for her bravery. Yet amid the chaos, she spotted a fleeting look from Nick, a measure of solidarity that urged her to go further. But then, a thought pierced her emerging confidence like an arrow. Would this alliance hold when the meeting concluded? If they turned on her, was she ready to bear that weight? The question hung heavy as the meeting spiraled further, tension coiling, as the time for confrontation inevitably approached. Emma was left with one critical question resonating internally: was she prepared to lead in vulnerability, knowing the fallout could very well rewrite her fate altogether? As voices swirled like a tempest, Emma stood unwavering, her spirit ignited. Would she wield her newfound strength towards the uncertain future that awaited her, or would the emerging alliances fray before they even had a chance to take shape? The cacophony ebbed into a brief lull as Emma processed the swirling thoughts drowning out the chaos around her. Voices battled over her words, and she could sense the hesitance of her colleagues dancing dangerously close to dissent. Each person had become a figure in a chess game, pawns maneuvering against an unseen threat that she had suddenly become threatening their status quo. Emma felt the weight of expectation resting heavily on her shoulders. Was she truly ready for the backlash that could emerge from her stance? The specter of inadequacy whispered in her ear. She had always struggled to assert herself amidst the throng of more vocal personalities. Yet, in some deep recess, an ember of resilience glowed, reminding her of why she had chosen this path. It was about more than confrontation, it was about transformation. Emma. The sharpness of David's voice cut through the tensions. You cannot seriously expect us to abandon tried-and-true strategies for some nebulous idea of collaboration that you haven't even tested? Emma inhaled sharply, a plan forming in her mind. What we have now isn't working. The results show it, she replied, but this time her tone was laced with even greater conviction. Our numbers are dipping steadily. We can't afford to dismiss this as just a mere hypothesis. Collaboration fosters innovation. It encourages diverse ideas. Isn't that a cornerstone of the success we strive for? With every word, she was creating an invisible line in the sand. It was own time to lean into discomfort, the very kind she had lived with for years, quietly simmering beneath the surface of her professional life. She was not alone in this. She could sense the stirrings of support growing in those who, like her, were tired of silent compliance. Their eyes flickered between her and David. She noticed Nick nodding, and a renewed strength surged through her as hope electrified the air. What are we really afraid of? She pressed. Change can be daunting, but it is also an opportunity for growth. Why not embrace that instead of quaking at the thought of failure? We risk falling into mediocrity if we do nothing. The hesitant murmur of voices began to shift. Several colleagues were leaning forward in their seats, intrigued rather than defensive, a subtle transformation punctuating the room's atmosphere. Just as she thought she might seize the momentum, David interjected again. We could initiate small teams for further discussion on this topic, he said, casting a glare Emma's way, but that doesn't mean we'll fundamentally change the way we operate. It was clear he was offering a compromise, an attempt to quell the growing unrest that she had stirred. There is merit in trialing your ideas on a smaller scale, Emma, he continued, but the way he said her name, almost dismissively, ignited sparks of indignation within her. No more small-scale adjustments. We need to address this face-to-face, Emma insisted, controlling her breathing as the ground shifted beneath her. If we never take a leap of faith, we are robbing ourselves of future successes. Not to mention the people whose voices remain unheard. The meeting had spiraled into a battleground of ethics, professional dignity, and the moral obligation to advocate for change. Emma felt her heartbeat quickening as she challenged not just David, but the very structure of their environment. What began as an internal struggle to assert herself now transformed into a collective questioning of conformity versus innovation. But amid the noise, something more insidious haunted her. Could she ensure that this temporary alliance would transcend the walls of the meeting room? As the deliberations progressed, inwardly she weighed her determination against the risk of isolation. Was she prepared for the inevitable fallout that might come from appending entrenched loyalties? The dialogue morphed into a storm of conflicting opinions, and within that tumult, Emma's resolve crystallized. She could not afford to retreat even if her heart quaked at the looming danger. Would her courage be enough to turn the tide, or would she find herself back at square one, swallowed again by the pervasive silence she had fought so valiantly to disrupt? As voices clashed and new alliances formed, a realization struck her: she was not just advocating for organizational change, she was on the precipice of redefining her own identity, shrouded in possibilities yet to be discovered. The decision lay before her, but the question remained: would she embrace this pivotal moment to carve a future not just for herself, but for everyone held captive by the culture of silence? The intensity in the room fluctuated as Emma held her ground against the uncertain tides of her colleagues' opinions. She could feel the collective energy shift, a palpable tension that both inspired and intimidated her. David's comfortable hold on the group began to falter as he sensed the undercurrents of rebellion. Emma seized the moment, her heart pounding with adrenaline. Let us consider outcomes, people, she urged, channeling every shred of confidence she could muster. If we commit to this new approach and fail, we'll at least learn something valuable. But if we stick with old methods that yield diminishing returns, what have we gained? We'll only exacerbate our challenges. Her eyes flitted across the room, landing on Nick, whose nods had transformed into murmurs of agreement from others, embers of dissent sparking to life. Emma's mind whirled, searching for the right blend of logic and emotion to solidify their momentum. We've all experienced the limitations of our current practices firsthand. Let us not continue digging the same trench when there's another path ahead. But the gravity of the moment weighed on her, her thoughts ricocheted between self-affirmation and self-doubt. Her voice, a beacon of urgency, was a stark contrast to her internal tempest. "Emma," David interjected again, this time more calculating, "you're suggesting we overhaul our foundation on theories and aspirations alone. It's reckless." The word hung in the air, tainted with condescension. Emma felt the heat creeping up her cheeks, but she forced her spine to straighten, willing herself to remain unshaken. Resentment flared within her, not just at his dismissal but at the stubbornness of a system she previously accepted without question. How many times had she been labeled reckless for daring to advocate for change? Gathering her thoughts, she felt an unexpected surge of clarity. Reckless could be defined as not acting when action is needed, she countered, now more emboldened. Keeping our heads in the sand, underestimating our capacity to evolve now that is reckless. We have the power to rise above mediocrity, and stagnation is our greatest threat. A buzz of agreement stirred in the room, stronger this time. Emma's heart raced. Could they really rally together in support of her vision? She focused on cultivating the nascent solidarity she felt instead of dwelling on potential isolation. No longer would she allow fear to shadow her ambitions. But while her heart soared, shadows of doubt lingered, whispering the consequences of failure. What if this alliance fractured? What if the conflict escalated? The determined glances shared among her colleagues highlighted the precarious balance between hope and fear. In that pivotal moment, she realized the necessity for her plan to extend beyond mere discussion. Emma needed a strategy to solidify their commitment to the vision she had proposed. "How about this," she suggested, her mind racing with possibilities, "let us break into small working groups. We can establish actionable steps to pilot this new approach. Assign roles based on strengths. Empower everyone to share their insights." The tension shifted, anticipation crackling in the air. David opened his mouth to object but paused, eyeing the room. Emma caught the flicker of compliance in his expression. He wouldn't oppose such collaborative strides in front of their peers. As colleagues began brainstorming logistics, Emma couldn't shake the sensation that she was on the verge of something significant not just for her career but as a transformation within herself. This was a moment of potential growth, not just within the organization but deeply rooted in her character. But lurking behind her newfound determination was an unsettling realization: she would have to confront the lingering fear of inadequacy that had held her back for so long. Was she worthy of leading this initiative, or would her insecurities resurface to thwart her plans? Empowered yet anxious, Emma found herself at a crossroads. The leadership she sought to embrace required not just courage, but a deliberate decision to relinquish old fears. As she prepared to guide her colleagues into uncharted territory, she knew each step over that threshold carried weight beyond the meeting room. What awaited her on the other side of this challenge? She found the strength to transform not just her workplace, but her very perception of self. And as this new chapter unfolded, the haunting question lingered: would her conviction hold strong when faced with the uncertainties to come? As the meeting progressed, Emma felt the tension transform into a nervous excitement. Her colleagues had fragmented into groups, a low hum of collaboration filling the air. Ideas began to spark, bouncing between individuals like electricity, and for the first time in the gathering, she felt utterly alive within this chaos of potential. She found herself drifting between the tables, listening intently to discussions, not just as a leader but as a participant. Each suggestion ignited her sense of purpose. They spoke of actionable steps, division of labor, and setting measurable goals. Yet, underneath the exhilaration, a relentless whisper tugged at her, the fear that their collective resolve would dissipate under the pressure of real-world application. "Let us aim for a trial run next month," Emma suggested during a lull, her voice steady as she fought against the emotional tremor that threatened to undermine her confidence. She noted how David's brow furrowed slightly, his body language shifting into a defensive posture. It would have been easy to retreat into uncertainty, but she held her ground, determined not to focus on him but rather on the burgeoning momentum surrounding her. Inwardly, Emma dissected the conflict between her instinct to lead and the chains of doubt that bound her. Why was it that each decision felt seismic? She questioned herself at every turn, her ideas, her competence, her right to steer a course for others. Each challenge she proposed seemed to amplify these self-doubts. But the positive feedback she received from her peers began to peel layers off her insecurities. As Jeff, one of the more vocal collaborators, extolled the value of Emma's concept, her heart raced not just from the praise but the awareness that she was stepping outside her comfort zone. Could she really be someone who inspired, rather than simply existed within the fabric of their organization? The meeting continued, and the once rigid structure set by David began to crack. His resistance softened as he increasingly acknowledged the merit in Emma's audacious goal. She could sense the shift taking hold not just in him, but in her. She walked like a commander through the battlefield of ideas, feeling her growing grasp on her leadership role. Yet, just as she found her rhythm, a creeping worry clawed back in the dread of consequence. What if their inspirational aspirations hit a wall when reality collided with vision? The aftermath of failure loomed ominously, a specter that haunted even the most enthusiastic discussions. Realizing the need for a solid foundation beneath their bravado, Emma insisted, "We should draft a feedback loop. After our trial, we'll want to evaluate our methods, re-strategize, and refine our approach based on what we learn." In that moment, she acknowledged the fundamental truth: leadership was not about being right or flawless, it was about adaptability, growth, and community. Each choice, each potential misstep was a brick laid in the foundation of her identity as a leader. Perhaps it was time to reshape her narrative from one of doubt to one of resilience, of embracing the messy intricacies of innovation rather than fearing them. Completed with the organization of their initial steps, Emma wrapped up the meeting. She stood at the front, looking at her colleagues, their excited chatter fading as she summarized their progress. She felt a warmth spreading in her chest, a blend of pride and caution. Perhaps today marked not just a shift in her workplace but a seismic shift in her self-perception. But as she walked away, a much deeper anxiety took root. The next challenge wouldn't simply be proving herself capable, it would demand confronting her greatest fears head-on. Would she be able to confront David directly when the time came, or would the familiar insecurities pull her back into shadows she thought she'd escaped? Determined, yet aware of the growing storm within and outside her, she realized she had to prepare, not just for the meetings ahead but for the inevitable confrontation with her former self. What awaited her in the next round of evaluations, when the growing rift between her ambitions and her doubts would finally demand resolution? Would her charade of confidence withstand the scrutiny to come? As the days passed, Emma found herself caught between the exhilarating stirrings of creativity within her team and the oppressive weight of her apprehensions. The excitement of the meeting lingered like an aftertaste, framing her daily interactions with her colleagues. However, with every passing moment, the reality of what lay ahead crept closer, sinking into her consciousness like a stone thrown into still water, stirring up the depths she had yet to navigate. On her drive to work, Emma frequently revisited her mantra from the meeting: feedback is a pathway to growth. Yet, the words felt hollow as doubts threatened to drown out her newfound zeal. The idea of presenting a trial run, one crafted from their collective brainstorming, gnawed at her. It was exhilarating for her team, but for Emma, it morphed into a looming responsibility that felt heavier than the weight of expectation. Stepping into the office, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. She could see her colleagues rallying around the ideas they had discussed, but a stitch of tension unraveled beneath that surface, a tension ignited by her impending confrontation with David. He was, undeniably, a formidable presence with his charisma and tenacity. Confronting his overly critical demeanor felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into the unknown. Despite her internal turmoil, Emma resolved to act. She began to formulate a strategy, not just for the trial run but for how she'd communicate her vision, a vision where constructive criticism sat shoulder to shoulder with encouragement. She sought to convince David that collaboration required vulnerability, and she needed to lay the groundwork for that in the next meeting. In the solitude of her office later that day, Emma penned down her thoughts. Each word served as a tiny stepping stone towards confronting David. Engagement through empathy, she wrote. She realized she couldn't continue addressing the team solely from a place of authority, she must invoke a sense of shared ambition. Each line etched her resolve deeper, and the act of writing itself became a source of empowerment. Days wore on, and the trial approach loomed near. Emma's colleagues worked fiercely, each bringing forth ideas she could have only dreamed of implementing in the past. Their trust in her leadership began to chip away at the fortress of doubt encasing her mind. During lunch one afternoon, Jeff approached her, eyes bright with excitement as he outlined a strategy for the trial, his confidence bolstering her own. "Emma," he said, "you've created a space for us to really shine. Just remember, we're all in this together." His words sparked a flicker of forgotten strength inside her, yet they also resurfaced the insecurities she thought had waned. Could she truly lead without faltering? With each passing hour spent preparing, a terror began to morph into determination. She envisioned the upcoming meeting vividly, the butterflies fluttering chaotic within her. But nestled within that chaos was a burgeoning fire of resolve. Explaining her vision directly to David meant confronting not only her apprehensions but the insecurities that had been rooted deep within her identity for so long. The night before the trial meeting, rest eluded her. Emma sat on her bed, her mind racing between possibilities. Could she be the leader she aspired to be? Would she emerge victorious, or would the specter of self-doubt shackle her once more? The echoes of her colleagues' expectations weighed heavily on her heart, reminding her of the stakes. As night fell, she made a decision. This time, she would not cower beneath the weight of expectations but would embrace them as fuel for her ascent. With renewed exuberance, Emma crafted her presentation, pouring every ounce of conviction and clarity into it. But still, a lingering question plagued her: would facing David be a confirmation of her evolution or a return to the smallness she once inhabited? The meeting was hours away, and with each tick of the clock, she felt the impending confrontation drawing closer. The moment had arrived. How would she respond when the formidable David challenged her vision? Would her courage withstand the judgment of his penetrating gaze, or would it shatter, leaving her vulnerable again, stripped bare before her team? Emma steeled herself today would not just define their project, but also the woman she was becoming. Emma stood outside the meeting room, her heart thrumming with a rhythm that echoed her unwavering determination. Today was pivotal not merely for the visionary project her team had devised but for the very essence of who she was becoming within this corporate labyrinth. As she pushed the door open, a hush settled over the room, and she faced her colleagues with a mixture of anxiety and purpose. The very air around her crackled with anticipation, each pair of eyes reflecting the hard work that had led them here. Emma remembered how she had once observed this dynamic from the periphery, feeling invisible. Now, she stood front and center, ready to shape the conversation. "Thank you all for gathering," she began, her voice steady, fortified by days of preparation and collaboration. "Today, we're not just here to discuss a trial run, we're here as advocates for change. As a team, we've cultivated ideas that bridge the gap between our current challenges and a culture of growth." Emma glanced at David, who leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression inscrutable. This was the moment that tested her resolve. She pushed past her lingering fears, determined not to retreat into the shadows. With each slide she presented, Emma felt her grip on the reins of leadership tighten. Her colleagues' faces lit up as she articulated their vision: the synergy of collaboration, the importance of open communication, the data supporting their strategy. The feedback loop they designed became more than just a metric, it evolved into a testament to their journey, to the trust they had built together. Let me remind you, she emphasized, innovation isn't merely an abstract idea. It results from willingness to embrace vulnerabilities. We can't afford to stifle groundbreaking perspectives for the comfort of conformity. Emma's words carried weight, she sensed the atmosphere shift. Colleagues nodded in agreement, reading the unspoken cues of camaraderie. Yet, she remained keenly aware of David's reticence. It hung behind his poised demeanor, ready to challenge her resolve. "Emma," he interjected, "do you honestly believe a team that hasn't previously collaborated in this way will yield significant outcomes? We're risking disruption without guaranteed success." The moment settled in the hush of the room, a challenge leveled directly at her. Just one misstep could come crashing down around her. Emma inhaled deeply, choosing conviction over self-doubt. "David, I firmly believe risks are fundamental to growth," she responded, her confidence rippling through her words. "Great companies don't emerge from maintaining the status quo, they arise from brave leaders who exploit every opportunity to evolve." She saw fleeting glances exchanged among her colleagues. They were allies in this endeavor, and this moment was becoming more than an argument, it was a collective stand. "Let us not fear discomfort," Emma continued, now emboldened. "Instead, let us embrace it. This trial's very purpose is to unveil inefficiencies and harness the creative potential we have together. I believe in our team's ability to navigate these uncharted waters stronger together." A palpable defiance settled in the room, as if her words had ignited flames beneath the dim lights. The tension broke, and the moment morphed into a shared vision, all hands on deck for an upheaval of their norms. Each face around her beamed with renewed vigor. David leaned forward, sensing the shift not just in the atmosphere, but in Emma herself. "I'm willing to discuss a pilot," he conceded slowly, "but only if we maintain clear performance indicators. Our future hinges on this, so it needs to be precisely executed." Emma seized the opportunity, ready to crystallize their collective ambitions. "Absolutely. We will define every parameter, involve every voice, and ensure that we adapt based on measurable feedback. This trial will not just be a test, it will become a cornerstone of our new culture." As collaborative energy suffused the room, Emma glanced at her colleagues, each face radiated a conviction mirrored in her own heart. They weren't merely spectators, they were fellow architects of a newfound narrative. In the following hour, the meeting morphed into a brainstorming session. The administration of plan structures bounced back and forth, a clash of ideas erupting into something greater than Emma had dared to imagine. As strategies unfolded, she felt the tightness in her chest dissolve, replaced by solidarity and excitement. And then, amid the rising tide of collaboration, she caught David's eye. His guarded expression had softened slightly, a flicker of respect glimmering among the uncertainty. In that single moment, she knew the battle was no longer about corporate politics, it was a fight for authenticity, for collective growth. By the time they adjourned, Emma felt an unfamiliar sense of empowerment flooding through her, a validation of her place in this world. She had entered the meeting as an intern who once remained invisible, she was leaving as a leader who had catalyzed change. As colleagues flooded out, their gratitude and camaraderie transformed the hallways into echo chambers of support. The shadows of self-doubt she had battled began to recede, warmly illuminated by the acknowledgement of her newfound competence. Outside, the sun broke through behind clouds, casting warm light that seemed to affirm her path forward. Emma stood still for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of her journey, how she had forged her way from timid intern into an agent of change. This was her final step of transformation, no longer bound by fear or the limited expectations of others. Her achievement wasn't merely the project they launched, but the powerful validation of her voice she had discovered. As she departed for the day, Emma felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had shattered the invisible barriers she had carried for too long, she was no longer just a spectator in her own life but the orchestrator of her destiny. This evolution marked a new chapter, one blossoming into potential that she was finally ready to embrace. Now, for those who have journeyed alongside Emma to witness growth born from adversity, this is the moment to actively engage with this content. You need to subscribe now to the channel to witness more compelling stories of personal transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support ignites these narratives for others to discover. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Emma's incredible journey. Let her story inspire you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformative tale. You can change someone's perspective today.